4:52, and I'm delighted that Michael League joins us, the bassist leader of the two-time Grammy Award-winning Snarky Puppy, who are in town tonight for their sold-out show at the Phoenix. Michael, welcome back to TO. It's great to see you, friend.
Thanks, Brad. Likewise.
All right, I want to talk about a lot of different things, but what is pretty prominent right now is that you as producer. Now, I know you've produced albums for your band, but in about a week's time, week and a day, David Crosby's new album's coming out, and you produced David's new album, and I wanted to get a sense of what that experience was like and how it comes to be. I know sort of a mutual admiration society brought you guys together, but how do you end up working with him in that very official capacity?
Yeah, well, he found us on YouTube, and then he kind of started relentlessly tweeting our videos, which is a very strange way of meeting one of your heroes.
No kidding.
So I sent him a private Twitter message saying, hey man, can I call you? After about 5 days of him posting these videos. And he said, yeah, and I gave him a shout. I invited him to be a part of our record Family Dinner Volume 2, which came out in February of this year. We had such a good time together that he asked if I wanted to produce his next solo record. So it was kind of really that simple. So I went out to California to his really beautiful little town that he lives in, north of LA, and we had a writing session. And we did like 3 tunes in 3 days, which was really cool, kind of start to finish. And then I came back and did another one. I think we did 3 more tunes. And then there were 3 other tunes that he had written with other people or by himself that were done. So we had a full record of material. And then in January, we went into Jackson Brown's studio in Santa Monica, Groove Masters, and bunkered in there for like, I think it was just 12 days or 13 days. He thought it was going to be 2 months. And I was like, man, we just need 2 weeks. I grew up in a generation where we have accepted that records don't make money, so we have to spend as little as possible.
No $1 million budgets.
No.
The full West Coast scene, though, Jackson Brown studio, David Crosby, that's, I can smell the ocean and see the car driving along it's just...
Yeah, it was surreal.
It's not necessarily, when you produce an album, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to write with the person. A lot of times those things don't happen together. Did one come before the other? Did the writing become an extension into producing, or was the producing going to happen no matter, even if you hadn't written a tune?
Well, I mean, I think he was a little bit reticent from the beginning to say, you're producing the album. Because that's a lot of trust to put in someone, especially someone 40 years younger than you, And he said, well, come over and write. I really want you to work on the record, And so once we started writing together, and then I started making demos for him, I think he started to kind of see the direction that it was going in.
It's a feeling out process, right? Like you're trying to see how you connect and musically what you can come up with.
Of course. And imagine that you hire someone with that amount of responsibility and they suck. That's just like, that's a really bad position to be in. So he was understandably cautious.
You think he would know that it probably wouldn't suck, but I think it would really be, because he knows the merits of your work and what you've done with the band, but it's about how you guys might be together.
The chemistry is important, but also, this record is, I told him from the beginning, I think you should make a record that is just you, basically. Guitars and odd tunings, really thick, harmonically dense vocal stacks, and songs about things that matter, like social issues and human relationships. And to me, that's the essence of David Crosby. And his record before that, Cross, is a super cool album, but it's kind of the opposite in that it's like full band, very, very like heavy-handed production work. Cross is a huge Steely Dan fan, so the record feels like that, and his son produced it, who's so talented, So I was thinking, well, it'll be good to just move in the opposite direction, to create...
Because he thought that Snarky Puppy was going to be his band, kind of, right? Like that you would produce it, and it would be that kind of him out front of that bigger sound.
Yeah, and it just took kind of one conversation and one songwriting session for him to realize that there was potential in this other direction, and it worked out so beautifully. It was so cool. I mean, to write songs with your hero is not something that you often get the opportunity to do.
Are there moments when you stand back from that and go, I can't, because the evolution of your career, you can't all the time pinch yourself and go, I can't believe I'm here. After a while, you expect to be where you are because it's been this step-by-step process. But at some point, do you go, I can't believe I'm in a room right now writing a song with David Crosby? Or is that does that get in your head too much, and it would get in the way of making something happen?
I try to never think like that.
That's probably right. A good thing to do.
I would just psych myself out. It's kind of like if you think about breathing, then you like have trouble breathing. It's like I'd rather just roll right on through it.
I have had moments like, not always, but I have had moments where I've been concerned about my own breathing. Is production, being a producer, I'm just wondering about the stylistic role that is. Is it about the notes? Is it about the sonically how the record sounds? Is it about the songs? Is it about being a friend and confidant so the artist just does his thing? How do you know what your role is? And even, not even in this case, but if you decided to do this moving on, is there going to be a sort of a way you will be in this role?
I mean, I would say the answer is like yes to all those things. It is being a friend and confidant. It is knowing the sonic spectrum and knowing about how to get tones out of instruments. And it's absolutely about capturing the emotion, of the moment and of the song. I mean, I think of production as really just kind of like putting a magnifying glass on a composition. So you want to draw out all of the internal components of what's there, including the history and the personal relationship of the artist to that music. So there were a lot of conversations, and being a part of the songwriting process was also enlightening because then you're really inside every lyric. So that was really beautiful. And David's so funny because he's like 74, and he's such a talker. He loves to just fire stuff back and forth and to bust my chops, and I bust his, and it was funny because we were so amazingly productive and efficient for the first week, and then there was a period of 2 days where it all kind of shut down for a minute, and I couldn't figure out what had changed, what had happened. I knew that there were some people coming in with cameras, but I realized that really it was because I started treating him in a professional context instead of like a buddy-buddy context, that the whole dynamic of the session and consequently the musical performance has changed.
Wow.
And his wife, who's a great friend of mine, sent me a really funny email saying, David works best when he's simultaneously praised and abused. Which I thought was so funny.
So wise of her to help to send that to you.
She's so deep, man. She's his other half. And so the next day we walked in, and me and the engineer were just immediately calling him the greatest singer in the world, and then telling him he wasn't worth a dollar, and then the music came right back, So production is I would say production is synonymous with psychology.
No kidding. That social dynamic is what can make or break what's happening musically. So earlier today, very exciting news, by the way. Earlier today, you guys are getting into the festival business, from what I understand. You guys are throwing Ground Up Music is throwing a big festival coming up in Miami, and that's a new foray into different things. Tell me, what was the impetus to start this new quadrant of the Snarky Puppy world?
Well, it's kind of the extension of our label, Ground Up Music, which, the whole point of starting this label was to expose listeners who love great music, regardless of the genre and the style, to new artists who maybe are not super well known. David's new record, Lighthouse, is coming out next week on our label, but there are a lot of artists that you probably haven't heard of that have records on our label. And the festival was kind of a way of putting everybody together, and then also drawing in artists from outside our label community, but still from inside our music community into the festival. So we have people like, David is performing. We also have Chris Thiele and Michael Daves, from Punch Brothers. We have Terrence Blanchard. We've got Pedrito Martinez from Cuba. We have load of great artists from our label, like Banda Magda and Charlie Hunter and people like that, but also Jacob Collier and Laura Mvula and Jeff Coffin, and I can't even remember all of the names because it's so thick. It's going to be so awesome.
I love the new Charlie Hunter record, by the way, too. It's just fabulous. What are the things that, as someone who's probably played a lot of music festivals, as a performer coming into the festival you're going to put together, what would you want to avoid? What are some of the pitfalls of a bad festival from a musician standpoint?
I made a list. Before we planned the festival out, I said, these are the things that I hate about festivals. These are the things I love about festivals. Let's do column 2 and none of column 1. The column 1 thing that always drives me crazy is going to a really well-programmed festival that has 3 artists I want to see playing at the same time. So you go see one song from an artist, you go see another song from another one, and you don't really get to lose yourself in the concert experience. So we have one stage, and it's 9 hours of music a day on that stage, full. And it also a very small audience. That was another thing that I hate, is going to see an artist in an audience with 9,000 people playing jazz or something.
Right.
You know, so it's 1,500 capacity every day.
Nice.
It's right on the beach, so it's like outside, but it's not like a noisy environment. You know, it's a very focused environment. So we tried to kind of build all those things in. Also, one of the main goals of the festival is to kind of leave the community in a better place than we found it. So each artist is actually required to perform some kind of active community service for Miami, whether it's like a free master class or clinic, or like Magda from Band of Magda is doing like a musical scavenger hunt.
Wow.
Carlos Malta is showing a film he made about the evolution of music in the Amazon forest, you know, in the jungle. I'm going to do a thing with a homeless shelter, you know, so the vibe is like to really interact with the community. All the catering is local, independent, you know, restaurants. So that's the whole spirit.
And the artist is very open and probably took to that concept willingly?
Yeah. I mean, it's not like, I think they were excited about it.
I would think. You're with Jazz FM 91. It's Brad, and I'm hanging out with Michael League from Snarky Puppy tonight at the Phoenix, but why bother? It's sold out. You can't go, so don't worry about it. You're also going to debut a new band that you've got going at this festival, too. Help me with the pronunciation. Bocante?
Bocante.
Bocante. Tell me about what's in your mind that you're not getting out somewhere else that this can help you with.
Well, I've been really into West African music for the last few years, and went to Mali to do something with Salif Keita, which was incredible. And what really strikes me about this music is how similar it is to the blues, you know, from the U.S. I mean, they even call it desert blues, right? Ali Farka Touré and kind of Tanarawin and these artists. So I was really, after all this kind of, these years and years with Snarky Puppy, doing really harmonically rich stuff and like highly kind of composed things, I was thinking, man, it would be so cool to start a band that's just really groove. Not that Snarky Puppy's not groove based, but you know, like harmonically very kind of grounded and a groove based thing. And there's a singer named a Canadian singer, actually from Montreal, originally from Guadeloupe, named Malika Tyrolian, who is a guest on Family Dinner Volume 1, and one of the most talented singers I've ever worked with. So she's singing in Creole on the whole record, a couple songs in French, but mostly Creole. And then there's 3 guitar players, Bob Lanzetti and Chris McQueen from Snarky Puppy, and I'm playing baritone guitar. Actually, I'm not playing bass in the band. And then there's 3 percussionists, Jamie Haddad from Paul Simon's band, Keita Ogawa, who plays in Band of Magda and Snarky Puppy, and then Andre Ferrari from the Swedish band Vesson. And then a pedal steel player named Roosevelt Collier from Church of the Sacred Steel in Miami. So it's like people from 4 different continents, lots of different languages represented. Malika's singing everything in Creole and French, and it's kind of this really interesting combination of the blues, West African music, and like Led Zeppelin. It's like this really bizarre.
Have you already rehearsed and done some music?
We made the record in April without ever having met each other, actually. Wow. Most of the people in the band had never met until we got into the studio. We made the record for a week. It comes out the first week of February. It's called Strange Circles. We're premiering the band at the festival, and then next year we're hoping to play the whole Canadian festival circuit as well as the European one, so we're already working on it.
Well, if you're hearing tones underneath our talk here, it's Jane Bennett McKeaghay or sound checking in our Long and McQuaid Performance Hall. I know you're heading to Cuba with Snarky Puppy in December for the Cuba International Jazz Festival. And as you talk about that group as well, too, can you just give me a sense of the traveling that you've been able to do with your band, how that's affected you as a person, but also how it's affected the music and your mind and everything? What is sort of getting to see the world done for you as a human being?
I think it's easy as an artist to like play the gig and go to the hotel and go to bed, you know, because traveling is exhausting in a lot of ways. And depending on your perspective on it, you can have very different kinds of experiences. And I think the approach that the guys in Snarky Puppy take is one that's kind of like looking at traveling as energizing rather than exhausting. We try our hardest in every city to eat local food, hang with local musicians, check out local music, you know, retain what little of that culture we can in the small amount of time that we have there. But if you're from the U.S., going to Japan for 24 hours can change your life. You know, maybe if you're from I don't know, Vietnam and you go to Thailand, maybe it's not that huge of a difference, but for us to go to the Far East, it's a big deal. Or to go to Turkey, or whatever. So I think we really try to soak up everything that we can. And it's interesting to see the way that people live, the way that they eat, the way that they make music, the way that they socialize. It's fascinating, and it puts the whole world, I think, into perspective. I especially with the things that are going on politically in the U.S. right now, I think it'd be a different scene if people traveled. We're like this giant island, and we only really see what's on our TV.
I think empathy comes with being in different places.
Absolutely. On a musical level and a social and political level.
Is that a band meeting where you come together and say, hey, let's all take, when we're in certain communities, let's all take part in them? Or does it just happen as everyone's kind of sensibility takes them that way?
I think you just have to do that once to know.
Right.
You just have to have one experience in a new place to know this is a good thing for me.
There's got to be one guy in the band that just hits the hotel, though, after the gig.
None.
No,
there were. In the beginning, there were a couple guys that were like that because they had done a lot of traveling and that was just their routine. Because they had never really gone and seen a Turkish band play at 3 in the morning and taken a drum lesson at 4 in the morning.
Had their mind blown.
Right. Yeah. But now it's like everyone hangs. It's great.
So great.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, we're thrilled. I just want to mention that Michael and Larnell will be part of our International Jazz Safari to Cuba in January. Also taking that community-based attitude into Cuba after your other experience there, and it will be we're so glad that you decided to come along and be part of that experience. And I just like chatting with you, Michael. It's always great to see you. So glad you're back in our city, and have a great gig tonight. And I'll look forward to being there and seeing you guys perform.
Thank you so much. Great to see you again.
Great.